So I was wondering whether coffee was good or bad for us.
Please let it be good.
I think I'm coming bearing bad news.
Oh, no. No, not coffee.
So, you get a little bit tired of getting these conflicting messages all the time.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do is to focus on the pure health effect of coffee.
Yes. Is there a lot of health effects of coffee
There is.
that we can just focus on?
There is. But let's say that coffee in general, we're not going to focus on how coffee is processed, its origin, its quality, etc. Right? We're going to consider coffee and its relation to health and health effects.
Right.
So, as we know, coffee is hugely popular. I'm drinking coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And you have many contradictory statements in the media and in studies. So sometimes we are told that it's a bad intoxicant that is leading to addiction. Sometimes they tell you that it has huge benefits, especially cognitively. So in the morning, you are told that if you drink 3 coffee a day, then your memory will improve.
Is that true, or is this just backed by the coffee industry?
So we're getting there, right?
Okay.
But I just want to point out that you read this, and maybe in the same newspaper in the evening, you just read that you must be very careful with coffee because it contributes to dementia. And there's many facts that are out there. Like there's a Swedish studies that showed that coffee in general, it would shrink the breast size of women.
Okay.
While protecting against cancer.
So it shrinks your breast, but it also protects you from cancer.
Exactly. This is a very fun fact, right?
Yeah. Are these reliable facts?
That's the point.
Okay.
So if we want to address these contradicting scientific studies, we mainly have 2 major problems with these studies, right?
Yeah.
They are all the confounding factors, meaning that you're observing people through questionnaires. Are you drinking? How much coffee do you drink every day? Do you drink, etc.?
Which can be misleading because not everybody remembers how much coffee they had that day.
That's true.
Right.
But what I call confounding factors is that you cannot isolate, even through a truthful questionnaire, people are drinking coffee, but what are they eating or drinking else? And so any effect you could identify
could be reacting with whatever they're having.
Why do you ascribe it to coffee?
Okay. One question before you get into what your findings are, and that is, bottom line, what's better, coffee or tea for your health? Or is one better than the other, or are they both the same?
Well, there is a lot of compounds in coffee, but let's say the main molecule that is studied is caffeine.
Yeah.
And there's twice as much caffeine in tea than in coffee.
Okay.
So let's maybe address a little bit later what caffeine does in our body, because
but by the caffeine factor, tea is twice as much than coffee. Okay, so by that token, perhaps coffee is better. But let's hear what you have to say.
And we will address what is caffeine exactly, right?
Okay.
But coming back to the studies, the confounding factors, and there's also in coffee in particular more than 800 molecules that have been identified. So which one do you really effect do you assign to caffeine itself? It's very hard to say.
Not all of those 800 molecules are necessarily bad for us. Some could be nutritious or no?
Well, these are very diverse molecules.
Okay.
And we don't exactly know. And everything depends on the dosage,
Yeah.
So in large, caffeine is a very large chemical molecule that is synthesized by the plant in order to protect itself from the damages that could cause insects and predators. It's an insecticide that the plant is producing.
Interesting, because my mother, whenever I go to Pakistan, I'm originally Pakistani, for the sake of those listening, would put coffee on the table to ward off all the insects. And it works. It works. And sometimes what she would do is she would light up the coffee with a match. And so then sort of like the smoke that comes out of the coffee worked like magic on insects every time. And it smelled so good.
Yes.
So it's a great hack.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the fume.
But even if you didn't light up the coffee, and if you just put the coffee by itself, the coffee powder or whatever, she wouldn't use her expensive coffee, of course. But it worked. It would ward off the insects. So yeah, there you go. Anyway.
So basically, you can say objectively that caffeine is a poison that can potentially be deadly to insects.
Yeah.
It's a fact, right?
Yeah.
And there is also precursor to caffeine So when the plant is producing caffeine, one of the intermediary molecule is called theobromine, and theobromine is shown to be deadly to dogs, for example. This is why chocolate is so contraindicated to a mammal such a dog. So it's an insecticide that is produced by the coffee plant as a form of self-protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is really what caffeine is. Now, if we go to the effects of caffeine that have been studied, we know that it increases the heart rate and it slightly increases the blood pressure.
Okay.
Slightly.
Yeah.
It increases the cardiac output and it increases the amount of urine you excrete.
Okay.
So these are objective effects.
I've heard caffeine has a dehydrating effect on us. I've heard that many times before.
Yes.
So, okay, that makes sense.
It makes sense that if the body has to get rid of a pesticide that is in the blood, then it would take out water with it. This is the function of our kidneys. Now, we have also identified effects on the brain that we call stimulation. In fact, it doesn't work as a stimulant. It works as caffeine as, let's say, a chemical structure that is very similar to a molecule that is called adenosine. And adenosine is a neurotransmitter that is produced in the brain. Adenosine is produced by the body or by your brain when there are signals that show that you are overstimulated. So it's slowing your activity. It is something that makes you tired. This signal is very important because if you overdo your activity, you can go into an overburn and tax your resources. So at one point you feel tired, and this adenosine that is produced and then goes into these transmitters, and the body recognizes the signal. What happens is that caffeine is actually taking the place of adenosine in many transmitters. So the body doesn't get the signal that it is time to rest. So you get overstimulated. You keep being stimulated. And your brain produces adenosine, but adenosine, the message is not heard by the body because caffeine is taking its place in the receptors.
So caffeine will overshadow it.
Yes.
And is that necessarily a bad thing? I'm not trying to justify the existence of coffee, but it would be nice to understand how bad it is that caffeine plays that role of adenosine. Does it mean that it diminishes our natural adenosine in our system?
No, you still produce adenosine, but this message is a message, a neurotransmitter. It needs to be heard by the body. And the way the body works is that the neurotransmitter adenosine is produced. It goes into these places, these doors to enter the neurons, for example. But the door is already occupied by someone.
By the coffee.
Okay. The signal that you are tired is very important.
Yeah.
Because if you kill this signal, you can go, it's like when people are on drugs, they can just be active all night.
And overdo it.
And then it can be very dangerous.
Right.
Because this signal of being tired means that the body needs to replenish certain functions.
Sure.
So this is the way it works. We also have identified linked to coffee in general, heartburn and reflux, acid reflux. But this is not really associated with coffee consumption. It's rather being associated with cereal consumption and some dairy products and sugary things that are consumed in large amounts today. When you consume amounts of sugar and honey that you add to the coffee drink. Okay, so, and basically in all, heartburns and acid reflux are due to stomach that is not acid enough.
Okay.
Which is terrible because modern medicine is treating acid reflux with proton inhibitors that lower the acidity of the stomach. Basically, it makes the reflux continue to happen, but it's not as acid, so it's less painful.
So it's happening, but you don't feel it, which is probably worse because you want to know something's going on.
Yeah, it's once again not addressing the cause.
Yeah.
So when people are suffering for acid reflux, if they go on an animal product only diet, it stops because the acidity of the stomach then is restored to its normal level. And the little door we have between our trachea and the stomach is closed. And it's the level of acidity in the stomach that determines whether this door is closed or not.
Yeah.
When the acid in the stomach is not high enough or low enough, then this door remains a bit open and you can have this reflux phenomenon. So we really observe that the cure to acid reflux and heartburn is going into eliminating plants, in fact, right? So now we can discuss the factors that basically determine whether consumption of coffee is healthy or not, right? You have a clinic in paleomedicine in Hungary that has been measuring an effect that makes total sense. It's the effect on consuming coffee and the gut.
Okay. How
Because if you think that caffeine is an insecticide,
Yeah.
how do you actually understand the effect and how this insecticide works on insects, right?
Right.
Well, the way it does it is that when the insect ingests the plant, the caffeine is having an effect on their digestive system.
Right.
So the hypothesis that it would do the same thing to us is sound, and they have proven it because they have taken people who, in their practice, people are using what they call a paleo-ketogenic diet, which is an animal-based with very minimal plants or no plants in general to cure autoimmune problems. And they measured the leakage of the gut, meaning that, your gut has a lining of cells that filters what is the inside the digestive system and goes into your blood.
Right.
And this is cells that are very tightly joined and let only go through the molecules, proteins, etc., that you eat that are degraded and digested, but would not let go through things that shouldn't go through.
Right.
And when certain chemicals are attacking these cell walls, then you have molecules that are bigger that can go through.
Right.
And these molecules, they are not supposed to be in your blood and traveling in your body, and they create inflammation everywhere because it's not recognized as sound by the body.
Hence a leaky gut.
It's the leaky gut syndrome. Right. So they measured the size of the molecules that can go through your digestive barrier. And there is a huge difference between someone who drinks coffee, and it's like 3 coffees a day, normal coffee, compared to someone who doesn't drink coffee. The molecules that are able to go through can be as twice big as for the one who drinks coffee as the one who doesn't.
So you have basically less filtration in your gut when you're drinking coffee. You're compromising the natural filters that we have to process things so that we don't get any conditions like leaky gut.
Yes, and especially important when you are suffering of an autoimmune disease or any inflammation.
So then for sure, coffee, tea, any caffeine, I would assume, is just
exactly
absolute no-no.
You have to admire the genius of the plant.
Yeah.
That is really make this effect to get the caffeine, in particular, enter the body of the insect. And of course, we have determined that there is a lethal dose of coffee.
Oh.
Yeah, it's called LD50, lethal dose 50. It's the dose of coffee that you need to drink to kill 50% of the people. And it is set at a large amount for humans, of course. It's 1 cup of coffee per day and per kilogram of body weight. So if you weigh 50 kilos, you would have to drink 50 cups of coffee a day. To die.
To die.
Yeah. Would kill 50% of the people, right? So, of course, the concentration of caffeine in our body is very rare. We would drink so much coffee. It can kill insects and small predators. For us, it's less easy to kill us because the quantity we are bigger animals, right? But still, the effect is
there.
Objectively there. And I would add that pregnant women are really advised not to drink coffee.
Yeah.
And this is exactly for the same reason, is that the biological membrane between the mother and the fetus is also being leaky.
Yeah.
And so there's less control of what separates the intestinal cavity from the blood. And then the baby can be harmed.
What a shame that coffee can have that effect. Do you think that if we limit our coffee, let's say 1 cup every 2 days, let's just be really reasonable and say 1 cup every maybe 3 days, do you think then it has a negligible effect on us?
I think in general, yes. My conclusion is that coffee in itself is not healthy. It modifies the functioning of the biological membranes. It triggers inflammation, allergies, autoimmune processes. And it all depends on your level of health, right? So it's up to us to determine the quantity. But in general, maybe we should consume coffee in small amounts in order not to expect unpleasant symptoms of effects. And now is a matter of intelligence. Each of us has to determine the level of coffee consumption, because it works exactly like alcohol or tobacco. It causes physical and mental addiction too, because this is something we have not addressed.
And we're so willing to absolutely abstain from alcohol and tobacco and even so many drugs, right? So why not put this in that category and just be willing to just stay away from it?
Yes.
Which could be hard for a lot of real coffee drinkers. I mean, I'm not an avid coffee drinker, so I can live without it and it's no big deal for me. I used to think I was a huge tea drinker. But then since I met you and learned the terrible dangers of drinking tea, I was able to give it up so easily. And so many other plants and plant-based foods that have a dangerous effect on our bodies. So for me, coffee is not a big deal to give up.
Yes, but many people have to deal with another dimension, which is the addiction that coffee is producing.
And it does have an addictive nature?
It causes physical and mental addiction. It cannot be overcome, but it can still cause weeks of discomfort, and it can put someone perseverance to a very difficult test. So addiction to caffeine in particular, it used to be included in the International Classification of Diseases until 2010.
Really?
Yeah, when you drink coffee, the number of your adenosine receptors, you know?
Yeah.
The receptors that slow down your body. They are taking up, the space is taken up by the caffeine. And so the inhibition is decreasing. But the body is still intelligent. It will create more receptors for adenosine to counterbalance this effect of caffeine. So you have, at one point, this effect of coffee has not so much effect on you because there's more receptors for adenosine.
So then you need more coffee.
If you want to counterbalance the tiredness, you need more coffee. But when you stop coffee, for 1 week, 2 weeks, you have a lot of adenosine receptors, meaning that the signal of slow down is exaggerated by the body.
And then?
So you feel these effects and these symptoms of being very tired, being slow, and drowsiness.
And you feel you need your coffee in order to pick yourself up again. Oh,
it's just a matter of pushing through, right? And you can have also migraine-like headaches, because the blood vessels are constricting. So it is said that addicted people are weak, but physiologically it's very easy to overcome. It will take a week.
Yeah.
But this mental addiction to feeling, not tired, you need to push through.
And I think some people just love the taste also, that aroma and that taste. It's kind of like chocolate, I guess. Once you develop that taste for it, yes, you get addicted because you really like it.
Yes, and there's all this social construct that has been built around coffee.
Let's meet for a coffee.
Exactly.
Let's have a coffee.
All social aspects of coffee consumption are playing a big role there. So I would say, as evidenced by the fact that coffee is not healthy, it's not clear how long and what quantity someone can consume coffee without having any negative consequences. I think it's up to us to determine that. But I would suggest that we refrain from endless coffee consumption and maybe consume it as a treat.
Yes, I'm sure we can consume it as a treat, but I think you and I have had that conversation around sugar, that the moment you actually do put more sugar in your body, once you've sort of cleaned yourself up from your sugar addiction, then your brain lights up again, and then it wants more and it wants more. So it just starts that vicious cycle all over again. So perhaps a better way, which is probably a little bit of a difficult way, would be that once you are cleaned up of your coffee addiction, then maybe not go back to it, because now you're over the addiction and hopefully you can stay away. Because the moment you introduce it again into your system, that wanting it kind of comes back, no?
Again, the phenomenon of addiction is very, let's say, different person to person.
Yeah.
So me, for example, I try to stop coffee for a month every year.
Okay.
And see if it has any effect on me.
Right.
For now, I don't see any. And during this month, I'm not obsessing over coffee.
But when you stop, do you get the headaches or do you get the longing?
I don't.
Okay.
So I don't see any effect, either positive or negative. It's just really a social thing. It's just drinking something hot, and it's.
But I've seen how you make your coffee. You put very little coffee into your. So what you do is, just so that everybody knows, you warm up the milk and you don't put any water, so it's all pure milk, and you like your full fat milk, and you put just. Not even, I would say, a quarter of a teaspoon. I mean, how much do you put? You put nothing. It's just for effect, I think. So I don't think the coffee has really entered your system.
It's true.
Yeah. And I think if we can all do it that way, and if we can just sort of do it more so that we can smell that aroma and have that flavor, maybe that's one way to go about it. But I guess you still get a good degree of coffee in your system if you do that on a daily basis.
Yes. Again, caffeine is just one of the insecticides that are found in plants. In fact, all plants contain this kind of stuff. So coffee is a very passionate subject for many people.
Yeah.
Okay, this is why we're addressing it. But in fact, the same considerations can be addressed, towards all plant consumption.
Yeah, but that's a very, very passionate subject for everybody because people love their fruits and vegetables, and they're not willing to understand or hear what the downside of all these natural chemicals. People think that it's pesticides from outside. It's not. Even a clean grown plant-based food is going to be detrimental to your health in some way or other. And these are the things that don't get put out into the mainstream knowledge. People aren't allowed to know this for some reason.
Yes, if you take a biological coffee versus a human pesticide grown coffee, you still have in the natural coffee bean maybe 1,000 more pesticides than anything that humans can add.
Is it considered coffee bean or is it actually a seed?
Oh, technically it is a seed because technically the whole thing is a fruit, and you get rid of the pulp of the fruit and then you process the seed itself.
There's pulp?
Yes.
Where?
In coffee.
Inside?
In the fruit of coffee.
Ah.
Yeah.
So you have the fruit, you open it up, and what's the fruit called? Sorry for my ignorance, I'm actually fascinated. What's the fruit of it called? Is it called the coffee fruit?
Well, technically it's a kind of berry.
It's a kind of berry?
Yes, it's called a coffee berry. So
okay.
You just take it and you remove the pulp and you get the seed. And this seed is then processed.
And this seed is what they call coffee beans. This is the actual bean. Yes. But it's a seed, which means that if we plant it, it would grow because it's a seed.
Probably, yeah, it's a fruit.
Okay. And is there some sort of a preparation that the seed needs to undergo so that it's safe for us to consume?
The whole processing of coffee beans, seeds, is very, very different. But of course, you need to roast them. Mm-hmm. But all this is to get some flavor. There's not much consideration into, let's say, safety purposes.
Right.
For example, caffeine, which is this toxic substance, is totally resistant to heat. So you will not
diminish it by heating it.
No.
Okay. Because some things in food you can diminish by just boiling or cooking it so that it's got lesser of the content of the harmful components.
Yes, traditionally cooking and fermenting are ways to reduce the toxicity of plants that you need to consume because basically there's nothing else available.
But by boiling your coffee, say with your water, that doesn't help the coffee to reduce any of its
not at all.
Toxins.
Not
okay.
at all.
Interesting. And why is it that sometimes we feel a little bit lower energy once we've sort of bypassed the coffee high? Is there anything to do with minerals or nutrients that it maybe diminishes or impacts?
No, the impact on energy itself is due to these receptors that the caffeine are blocking. So when you have more receptors being produced by the body, now these molecules can go and give the signal of fatigue, But in terms of pure biological impact of drinking coffee, it is known that, for example, there are substances in coffee. It's not caffeine itself. It's like phytic acid that would rob you from your minerals. So there is a lower absorption of iron, for example, that happens when you drink coffee.
Really? So that's really important for women to know, especially since women tend to be lower on iron.
Yes. They need to be, because of this period phenomenon, losing blood means losing iron. And you need to replenish constantly this. The best form of iron is heme iron that is only found in animal products.
Like red meats, obviously they're high in iron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the right form of iron. You have iron in spinach,
But if I have coffee whilst having a primarily meat diet, it would diminish the impact of the meat diet when it comes to minerals.
Exactly. And this is a common theme. When you eat plants along with animal products, the absorption of minerals and vitamins that you have are lowered by the plants, because the strategy of the plant mostly is to try to rob you from any nutrition possible, so that you will be weakened. So I think there's a sense of proportion to keep. And in regard of our health, I think we are the only one who can judge the effect of anything, because we must never forget that our bodies are equipped to deal with toxins and toxicity.
Yeah.
So it is really a matter of intelligence. Do we feel good? Are we in optimal health?
Right.
And in this case, if we drink coffee and we see no impact on this, why not?
Yeah.
But if we suffer of any adverse health, I would recommend just to cut out coffee and plants in general, reach this optimal health, then reintroduce and see what happens.
I tried that. I don't think the reintroduce part is the part that I think I want to stay away from, because my test on whether I'm in good health or not is how tired I feel in the day. And to be very fair to this test, whenever I cut out any caffeine, whether it's coffee or chocolate or tea, I just feel like the Incredible Hulk. Like, I just have so much energy and I have so much strength. And waking up in the mornings, no matter how early and how much work I have to tend to, is never a big deal. But put me back with even a cup of coffee, or God forbid, if there's any sweet with that, if I should have a dessert or whatever, both those things have a very difficult effect on my energy levels. So therefore, I know that they're impacting my health in some way. And I've tried it where I've just sort of cut out the sugars and I've just done coffee, and even then I get impacted. So I think we all need to be very honest with ourselves. As much as I love sweet desserts, and I do like drinking coffee, though I don't love it necessarily, but I do like drinking coffee once in a while. But if I'm being painfully honest, these things do just shoot down my energy levels, and therefore, no doubt, are impacting my health.
Yes, I think it's worth the experiment. And each of us should really assess the impact of what we eat.